Hello everyone, Zero Kimchi here. You may also know me as Kimchi, moderating the Discord server of Strato and distributor of Mesa turnip drivers for Android emulators. Welcome to my channel. Today, we're diving deep into Winlator, a Windows emulator for Android. Whether you're a retro gaming enthusiast or just want to run some modern PC games on your phone, this guide has got you covered. Winlator, developed by Bruno SX, aims to bring Windows applications, specifically games, to the Android platform. Running Windows games on a phone isn't a new concept. It's important to manage expectations. Winlator and its components are still under active development, and compatibility with various Windows games can be a hit or miss. Performance may also vary depending on your device's hardware and the specific game you're trying to run. Additionally, some technical knowledge might be required to configure Winlator and individual programs for optimal results. But don't worry, I will try to cover all the layers of Winlator as much as possible, along with tips and tricks and some solutions to some issues. Besides the official Winlator, there are 4 other versions maintained by modders to further expand on the compatibility of various features within the emulator. I won't be covering what they do best. That is something for you to experience and decide. However, they all strive to bring the best experience and stability, whether by implementing a newer Wine version, implementing new box versions, graphics APIs, and even fixing some bugs. For this guide, I will be using AJAY's modded Winlator. His version includes a myriad of extra files, fixes, and software to increase compatibility, which most won't work on the official version. Before we get started with Winlator, let's talk about transferring data and games, and the best way to do this. The topic might seem basic, but trust me, doing this way would make a world of difference and save a lot of time. I highly recommend using MT Manager if you are transferring your data and games to Winlator's virtual drives. As you can see, transferring data from your phone storage to one of Winlator's storages is blazing fast compared to other file managers. One last thing, I will show you the directory structure of Winlator within Android. This is important to know if you want to go deeper into Winlator with adding drivers, software, and fixes. Winlator creates virtual drives to mimic a Windows system, but because of scoped storage, you can't normally see them using a file browser right off the bat. They're kind of hidden in the background. I will show you now how to add its scoped storage as a bookmark on MT Manager so it'll be easier accessible. Alright, so open up MT Manager, tap the icon on the upper left corner. Now tap the 3 dots on the side menu's upper right corner, add local storage. Then Android's internal file browser will open up. If you're not seeing this directory, then all you need to do next is tap the icon on the left upper corner and tap on Winlator. Now let's bookmark the relevant directory where you will be spending most of your time in. Tap on Data, Files, Image FS, and then use this folder. And lastly, tap Allow. So when you open up MT Manager, you will see on your right side the local storage of your phone. Once you open a bookmark, it will appear on the left side, like so. Now I will show you where all the interesting files like drivers, wrappers, and softwares are located. Home is where the directories of your C drive will be located. In the lib folder you will find the turnip driver library, which can be replaced with another. However, turnip drivers cannot be swapped between modded Winlators and the official because of some odd compatibility issue which only the main developer can fix. In this directory, you will find everything present in the Start menu. These can also be replaced between Winlator mods. Now it's time to show you how to properly set up Winlator. After installing Winlator and opening it up, you will be greeted by this empty screen. Tap on the icon on the top left corner to bring up a menu. In the shortcuts screen, you will find all the shortcuts of games you've made. More on that later. Let's go back. On this screen, you can set up your input controls. You can activate a predefined controls profile. You can create a custom profile. With a profile active, this icon allows you to edit it. This button duplicates the selected profile, and a delete button for the selected profile. Cursor speed is as the name implies. Adjusts the touch overlay's opacity. Import profile and export profiles, just as the name implies. With a profile selected, tap on the Controls Editor button. A screen with a grid will open. By tapping any location on the grid, a crosshair will appear, which indicates the location where the controls will be placed. Once you've decided a proper location, tap on the plus button to add a UI element. Oh, by the way, this here shows which profile is selected. As you can see, a circle button has been placed at the crosshair's location with the text None to indicate nothing has been mapped on it. Now, to map a key on it, tap on the cog button. A menu will open up with several settings. The type of button, the shape of the button. There's a scale option, speaks for itself. In the binding section, you can choose what keys from a type of controller you can bind the button to. The drop-down menu next to it shows your choice of keys. Toggle switch turns your button into a continuous input button, one which you would just press once. You can add a custom text to your buttons. This is limited to 8 characters. Do note that the text applies after accepting changes. You'd have to exit the menu for that. This lets you choose an icon, also only applies after exiting the menu. Each button has its own settings. In Range button, you can adjust the range and type of characters you want it to show. Alphabetical keys, numbers keys, function keys, and numpad keys. You can set the range button to horizontal or vertical. You can adjust how many buttons you would like it to show for a maximum of 8 buttons. Next is the stick button, which has its own controller type bindings as well. And lastly, a trackpad. To adjust a button, all you need to do is tap on it. Let's go back. At the bottom of the input control screen, you will also find external controllers. This shows the controllers connected to your device. As the screen here says, you can add buttons by pressing any buttons on your controller. Each button can also have a controller type. Keyboard is useful for when the game does have controller support. You can make your controller behave like a mouse. And then there is Gamepad. Unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure where this one is applicable. It never worked when testing. That's it for input controls. Moving on to settings. On this screen you can install custom wine builds. I won't be covering how and where to get these wine builds, just letting you know you can. However, if you don't know what you're doing, it is best to just use the wine builds that are included since they are tailored to work with Winlator. These drop-down settings let you choose a version of the box you'd like to run. More on that later. Box presets. They play a crucial role in how well your favorite games run on your phone. They contain environment variables which can make or break the games you attempt to run. You don't need to worry too much about these flags. Usually any of the stability, compatibility, intermediate or performance can get the job done. This section only serves to show you the existing presets and to allow you to create custom ones. Just note, selecting them here won't have any effect on your containers or games. As the icons next to them indicate, you could create your own presets, but only edit your own self-made presets, duplicate and delete. When you tap on the plus button, a screen will pop up with a prompt to name the preset. It will also let you adjust a collection of DynaRec related variables. However, at the time of creating this video, it is not possible to add some yourself. According to one of the mod's developers, it is only possible before building the application. Moving on, there is another cursor speed. If no controller profile has been applied to the game shortcut in the shortcuts menu, then this value will be used. Direct Rendering Manager Interface 3 allows direct access to graphics card for improved performance. It is unclear how this affects your games. Just leave it enabled. If some games are causing issues, you could try to disable this. Everything in Winlator is trial and error after all. The last two options are DevTools. Enable box logs is useful to generate logs from the moment you boot a container or launch a game through shortcuts. If something goes wrong, like a game crashes or the game does not boot, the log will show traces of this happening. Very useful for bug reporting to the developers. I will show you later how. Let's get down to business with creating a container, where you will be spending most of your time adjusting. These containers are like little virtual worlds within Winlator where you run your favorite games. I'll break it down step by step. You can give it a name and select a resolution you would like to render windows in. The resolution you select will also be used and locked for the games. Old games might support particular resolutions, so make sure you select what they support. If a resolution is not included in the list, you can apply a custom one. The graphic driver setting lets you select a graphic driver. Turnip is the default driver for Snapdragon devices and it is also the best one. Turnip does not support devices with Mali GPUs, so they are stuck using VirGL, which performs worse, unfortunately. You can also select a version of Turnip. Each version can behave differently. Depending on the games you're running, some may exhibit bugs like graphic glitches, crashes, freezes, and even may perform worse or better. DirectX wrappers translate instructions to the GPU of your device. For Turnip users, most games should work with DXVK. DXVK plays DDraw, DirectX 8, DirectX 9, DirectX 10, and DirectX 11 games. VKD3D plays DirectX 12 games. CNC DDraw is also part of WinD3D, so normally it is not necessary to select this wrapper. CNC DDraw plays 1, 2, DirectX 7 games. On this screen you can choose a DirectX VK version, each of which may have different compatibility for games. There is also a frame rate option to lock the game to a frame rate of choice. Remember, a lower frame rate may offer better battery life. Max device memory is just a fake entry. Some games require an entry to work though. For VirGL users, you can only choose WinD3D and CNC DDraw. If you don't know which graphics API your game uses, a simple Google search will reveal this. A good site I often consult is PC Gaming Wiki. I dropped the link in the description of this video. Next we got the audio driver. You can select either ALCA or Pulse Audio. You will need to experiment which is best for your game. Show FPS enables a simple FPS counter. This can be useful for applications using D3D from multiple threads. Just leave on. Disabling doesn't impact the performance. Some games may demand a specific GPU, but this is extremely rare. I haven't run into one myself yet. You can pick whichever. For off-screen rendering implementation, it is recommended by the developers to leave it on FBO, since it is fastest. Strict shader math. This fixes some textures being missing or bugged in some games, but is quite rare. It is also recommended to leave this on. Video memory size is the same thing I explained earlier. This you can ignore since it's a fake entry. This option locks the mouse to the camera movement to how it behaves like playing Android FPS games. Next we'll take a look at the Win component screen. Most of this is best left on default, except if a game really needs direct music, direct play and direct show, then they can be set to native windows. Winlator comes with some preset variables, but the cool part is you can customize them. This is especially helpful for troubleshooting games that aren't working quite right. Using environment variables can be quite advanced, but it opens a world of possibilities for getting the most out of Winlator. Don't be afraid to experiment, and if you get stuck, the online community of EmuGear International and EmuPlay Zero's communities are there to help. Invite links and links to more environment variables in the video description below. You can add more variables by tapping Add, either typing the variable or tapping on the icon next to the entry box to select one that is already included with Winlator. Notice, however, that you will need to type in a value. However, some of them can be selected after entering your new variable, which after you'll notice a drop-down box at the value entry box. Click on that and it will show you all the possible values you can apply to it. Variables and their values for turnip, box64, box86 and DXVK can be found on the websites I linked in the description below. I will not be covering all of the variables, however, I will give you some recommendations that are commonly used. EU_debug. This is a turnip environment variable which is used to debug faults and hangs on the GPU. The values can disable, enable certain Vulkan extensions which may have a significant impact on how the game behaves. Certain values may fix graphical errors or crashes and freezes. Experimentation is your best friend. DXVK Async is a hacky solution for shader compilation stutter when using DXVK. Do note, some games may need DXVK state cache for this to work. Mesa extension max year. This is to work around a bug in some games where the extension string is copied into a fixed size buffer without truncating. If the extension string is too long, the buffer overrun can cause the game to crash. This is usually used for older games. Pulse latency is used with audio pulse enabled in the audio driver config. This variable may fix some audio crackling in games. DXVK HUD enables hardware analytics when using DXVK, such as FPS, driver version, graphics API version, etc. Gallium HUD enables FPS when using VirGL wrapper. Up next is a really simple one. Here you can add a drive that will show up once you run a container. By default, the D drive is used for your device's download folder. The drives present may change during development, as the developers constantly try to find a way to efficiently store and run games with better performance. Unfortunately, at the time of creating this video, linking a directory to a drive through the device's file manager does not work. You will need to input a path manually. For this example, I will be using Mi Explorer. Navigate to the directory you would like to set as a drive. Copy the path, then go back to Winlator, paste it in, and you're done. Let's go over to the final tab. On this screen you will see the box presets again. These presets are used whenever you boot a container instead of a game shortcut. As mentioned earlier, usually any of the stability, compatibility, intermediate or performance can get the job done. In startup selection, these control the services that run when booting a container. With normal, it will start all services. It may be required for specific games. Essential loads only a few services for general use. Aggressive don't load any services. This is for specific games and may improve performance slightly. Winlator offers two container types, non-WoW64 and WoW64. But this also depends on the wine version. Some wine versions do not support WoW64, like the current container I'm configuring right now. This is a Wine 8.0.2 container version. Non-WoW64 containers are designed for native 64-bit Windows applications, potentially offering smoother performance if compatibility allows. WoW64 containers, on the other hand, leverage the WoW64 compatibility layer within Wine itself. This is very interesting for newer devices that possess SOCs that no longer have 30-bit cores. They're no longer needed as WoW64 translates 30-bit instructions to the 64-bit cores. Do note, WoW64 mode is fixed to a box version and does not require configuration. Non-WoW64 mode's box version can be changed, however, at least at the time of creating this video. Now for processor affinity, this is another very important part of Winlator which can make or break the performance of your games. By assigning specific tasks to the most efficient cores, Winlator can potentially improve the overall performance of your game. This can lead to fewer stutters and more enjoyable experience. Optimizing how your processor works can also lead to improved battery life. By focusing the workload on specific cores, Winlator might allow others to rest, saving some precious battery power. The best settings can vary depending on your specific device and the game you're running. Don't be afraid to experiment with different configurations. However, there is a one-size-fits-all approach that you could use, which is disabling one efficiency core on the 64-bit row, which is the first row. You still need a few efficiency cores reserved for Android's operating system's background tasks. The 30-bit row may pass with disabling more efficiency cores. I would not recommend touching the middle cores. They are reserved as support cores for the prime cores or big core. To find out your core setup, you could download and install CPU-Z from the Play Store. The cores with the lowest frequencies will be your efficiency cores. As you can see on my Snapdragon G3X Gen 2 device, this is the first 3 cores. CPU 7 on this device is the prime core, which is the fastest core and is used for demanding tasks such as games, which you would need to have enabled for Winlator. Now with the container setup, let's go ahead and boot it. Once booted, you should be greeted by a Windows File Manager showing all your drivers. The C drive is your Windows local storage. The D drive is the device's downloads directory. There is also an empty E drive, not sure what this is meant for. The F drive is the one I added myself earlier. And the Z drive is the root of Winlator. Let's take a look at the Start menu. In here you will find similar applications that you will find on a genuine Windows. Game controllers to test your physical controller connected to your device. In System Tools, Ayaneo and Gecko installers are important softwares that you'll be installing all the time. They may fix games and add compatibility. With Wine configuration, you can change the Windows version, which some games may demand a specific version. In the Libraries tab, you can find all the libraries being used. You can add and remove too. In the Drives tab, you can add more drives and other types, like CD drive. Some old games may need a CD in order to boot. To fix this, you would add a drive, browse to the extracted CD directory, select the directory, click on Show Advanced, and change the type to CD-ROM. Apply and OK. Moving on, depending on the modded emulator you use, there will be different directories containing a multitude of fixes. In this particular mod, which is the RD4 clone by AJAY, you will find a directory called AJAY Start Menu, which contains all the files needed to make games run. There is VC Redist, PhysX, OpenAll, Xinput patches, sound drivers, graphic drivers, DXPK, and Wine D3D wrappers. Now for the last topic of this video, tips and tricks. It is recommended to create several containers with different installed compatibility softwares. One container with just VC Redist, one with just Wine Mono and Gecko, and another with all of them. With this setup, you can reliably troubleshoot games with issues and narrow it down. Next, I'll show how to create shortcuts of your games. That way you won't need to always boot into the container to play a game. You can also adjust Winlator settings on a per game basis. You can also have shortcuts per container of the same games. Different versions of games behave differently. One thing important to know, currently with the way this emulator works, game versions, in example, regular version and special editions, or games tied to Epic, EA or Steam launchers, can behave differently. Some will not work at all. This unfortunately requires trial and error or reliance on the community. Maybe someone might have tested the game. This is very apparent with game engines as well. Knowing the game engine will make it easier for you to decide whether you want to try the game or not. Unity, for example, is currently an abysmal experience. Games rarely work, and if they do work, they might have terrible performance. Unity is a trash game engine anyway. In contrast, you might have a better experience with Unreal Engine 3, Game Maker, and a lot of proprietary game engines. DRM, as well as cracks from different cracking teams, can affect the game's compatibility or stability. Even DRM-free games might not work at all until you install a crack or try to emulate Steam with Goldberg. Some games might not support Xinput. It could, however, support D-input instead. You can change this on your game's shortcut screen in the Advanced tab. Standard is basically D-input. A lot of games controller support might just not work at all. This is when you might have to rely on community-made patches, or, unfortunately, wait for fixes from the Wine developers or Winlator. Alright folks, that's it for our in-depth look at Winlator. By now, you should be a Winlator whiz, running your favorite Windows programs and games right on your Android device. If you ran into any issues or have questions, please visit us at EmuGear International or EmuPlay0 Discord community. Links to these Discord servers in the description of the video below. Remember, Winlator is still under development, so there might be some bumps along the road. But with its constant updates and growing community, the future for mobile Windows emulation is looking bright. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more tech tutorials and emulation shenanigans. For those who got Winlator up and running, I'm curious, what are your most excited play or use? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and happy emulating. Kim Jong-un